Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to AustinUP's webinar for, gosh, I can't believe it's September already. Welcome, everybody. We're so happy to have you here. We'll wait for everybody to come in. It takes a little bit for everybody to come in, so we'll just kind of chatter here for a couple minutes, not minutes, couple seconds before we get started. But we're so happy that you're all here today. Today is Age My Way question and answer, and this is our webinar where we're going to be talking about home sweet home. Should I stay or should I go? And we are so happy to have you all here today. My name is Cindy Cummings. I'm a volunteer for AustinUP, and we can't wait for you to learn more about what we learned the past couple months on this particular topic. So without further ado, I think we will begin. You are at a webinar with AustinUP. AustinUP is a nonprofit in Austin, Texas, and aging, everybody's doing it. That is our tagline. And our purpose is, let me see if I can forward this. Our vision is to create a region that responds to aging as a dynamic rather than a stagnant force. And we are all aging all the time, and we want to make Central Texas a place that supports each of us as we age. We do that a couple different ways. Mostly we're doing educational kinds of events that help to connect older adults with information. That's one of the things we do. And we have other events coming up. We'll tell you a little bit more about those in the upcoming slides. So today we are doing Age My Way question and answer. We actually held an Age My Way event, and at the event we broke out into sessions and we asked older adults about 3 different topics. The 3 topics were home sweet home, should I stay or should I go? The other is technology should be fun, should be, making tech work for you. And the other is getting down to business, what makes me a repeat customer. So those were our 3 breakout areas, and we had groups come through and we had a series of questions that we asked older adults. We compiled that information, and from that information, we determined that there's some hot topics and, some solutions that need to be had. Some of the solutions might take a while for them to occur, but we have solutions today. And so our panelists today are going to be offering you solutions on some of the topics that we heard were problems, for older adults, and whether they should stay in their home or whether they should move. So we hope that you join us in October and November. You can go to our website at austinup.org events, and you can sign up for future webinars too. We hope you share this information with your friends and family, and we hope that you will invite others to come and listen to future webinars. If you want somebody to see this webinar later, we are pretty fancy. We have a YouTube channel, so you can go to our YouTube channel and you can watch it there again. So first off, let's talk a little bit more about what AustinUP does. We are very concerned about helping older adults maintain quality of life. One of the things for quality of life is having work, being able to pay for where you live, paying for food and things like that. So we have been doing job fairs and we've been doing webinars online, and our webinars have been fascinating this year. We had somebody come and talk about how you can do remote work. She actually lives in an RV and travels across the nation. So we've had great webinars. You can go to our website to hear more about our webinars, but we had 2 in-person job fairs, and our job fairs are coming up next week. One is at Shalom, Austin. We've held one there before. It's a beautiful facility, so we're very excited to be there. And then we're holding one in November, and you think, gosh, are people hiring in November? Yes, people are hiring in November. So you'll have retail, we have IRS, we have all different kinds of businesses that are looking for employees. They're looking for short-term, long-term, part-time, full-time, remote, in-person. It's just really interesting, all the different opportunities that are available. So we hope that you will show up. You will tell your friends, and we'll see you September 14th. You can sign up for that. We wouldn't be able to do the job fair without our sponsor. Our premier sponsor is AARP. They have been a huge support to us all this year, and they're going to be supporting in that job fair that's coming up. It's from 10 to noon. And in addition to having actual employers there that you can talk face-to-face with, which is critical because you can really build those relationships, we also have a speaker. So we'll have somebody who will be talking about something important for your job search. So that's one of the areas that we're very passionate in, is helping people to get jobs if they want them. Another that we've just started is a partnership with Old Quarry Branch Library. And they wanted to bring an educational series to their library. And we had people who want to speak. So it was a perfect matching. And we've already had our first one. I can't remember how many people came, about 15 people came, but we're having another one September 20th. And the topic is having it your way, even when you can't speak. This is going to be talking quite a bit about documents that you might need, conversations that you would have with people, that when you can't speak for yourself, that you would have those things in place. On October 18th, one of my favorite tips on communicating with your adult children. Yes, we're going to give you some helpful hints on how to have tough conversations with your kids. Some of those conversations are, oh, I guess I'm not advancing my slide. Hold, please. You ever have technical problems? I have. Hold on one second. I think I have an old set of slides in the back. Let me see if I can get out of this. This is the perfect time for me to bring up also that we have a chat area and we have a question and answer area. And in those question and answer area or in the chat, if you have any questions, if you would just bring them up through there. What will happen is Paula, she's helping in the background. She'll prompt me to ask the questions that you might have in there. So let me see if I can get this going again. Okay. Paula, you can text me or you can chat with me and tell me if it's saying from the beginning or where it's saying from. These slides are so beautiful. I want you to have them all. Do you see that? You can just yell at me.
I see business member and now sponsors.
Okay, cool. Well, just for grins, I'm going to go to the job fair because it's so cute. So here we have our little job seeker. So Shalom Austin is going to be September 14th and November 16th will be Affinity at South Park Meadows. South Park Meadows is a senior apartment complex. They have great parking. It's a really great facility also for holding an event like this. What we're hoping is we are having these job fairs in different areas of town so that you should be able to find an employer who is in that area of town so you're not driving from south to north or whatever. So that's why we've held them all across the city this year. Let me go to my next one. So this is the Aging Masterfully series. And so tips on communicating with adult children. Then next November 15th, we're going to have Living, Dying, and Leaving a Legacy. And that's going to be a great panel discussion talking about those subjects. So that is a partnership with Old Quarry Branch, Austin Public Libraries. And they're kind of in the north part of town, I guess, north of Austin. They're easy to find though. We want to thank all of our sponsors, and we can't do anything without our sponsors. AARP has been huge. My company, Cummings Home Team and Turnkey Transitions. We've given quite a bit of time and money this year. And then these are all the others: Seniorific, United Healthcare, Buckner Villas, Oasis, Accountable Aging, Assisting Hands, Heavenly Care, Lakeline Oaks, Belmont Village, Longleaf, Ryan, Sedalis, Brookdale at Home, Brush Country, Near, WellMed, Corinthia, Texas Living Locators, and Westminster. So we want to thank all of our sponsors for all of our different events for this past year. We also have business memberships. This is a list of our business memberships. You purchase a business membership per year, and we have lots of different benefits for business members. And we hope if you're a business company and you're on today and you're interested in partnering with us, please go to our website and learn more about the benefits of being a member. So today's event is generously sponsored by Buckner Villas, and we happen to have somebody here today that will be speaking, and we'll go ahead and pull them in. Paula, can you do that? I'm having a little bit of technical issues. Imagine that. And if you're having trouble, I can go ahead and close my slides to do that, but I'm losing some of my, there he is. Hey, Paul. Welcome, welcome. So Paul is from Buckner Villas, and he is one of our business members. And in addition to being a business member, they're actually sponsoring today's webinar. So Paul, thank you so much for being here, and tell us what's going on at Buckner Villas.
My pleasure, Cindy, and thank you for the opportunity to be part of today's webinar. I think it's a great opportunity for people who are just looking at their options, you know. Part of that is what we do here at Buckner. And I won't take too much of your time, but Buckner is a faith-based nonprofit organization that has been in Texas for over 142 years, actually. A lot of people don't know how long we've been around, but it was started as an orphanage after the Civil War, of all things, up in what is now downtown Dallas. And Dr. Buckner raised $27 and started building an orphanage. And around it, they built cottages for retired pastors, missionaries, and they helped take care of the 400 plus children who called that home. And then the children helped take care of them in their elder years. And that's really where you have the roots of Buckner Retirement Services. But Buckner's all over the world. Actually, a lot of people don't realize that either. We're on, I think, 4 or 5 continents with our children and family services, adoption agency, foster care, all kinds of neat things. It's really a neat nonprofit, and why you'll find so much of our staff tend to stick around. So I'm here at Buckner Villas in North Austin. We've been here over 50 years, and I've been with Buckner for over 20 years, which is not out of the norm around our community. We actually have over 1,000 years amongst our staff, but we offer one of the few CCRCs in the Austin area. And what CCRC means, and most people don't have a reason to know that, is Continuum of Care Retirement Community. And that means you offer all 4 levels of senior living options, from independent living to assisted living, memory care, and then skilled nursing and rehab services. So all the spectrums of potential senior living are covered at one community. And we're located on a 25-acre campus, again, that's been here over 5 decades, but we've rebuilt over the last decade or so. So it's been refreshed, and we've even added on about 4 years ago as well. So we're happy to provide, a service to many people out there and families who are interested in our help. I'm happy to be of service to anyone who's out there looking at their options. Usually when people get to this stage in life and with a loved one or themselves, and they're just looking at options, it's a kind of a new road to navigate. And I know a lot of that will be discussed in today's webinar with the panelists. But if anybody ever has any questions, even beyond Buckner Villas, I'm happy to be a resource just regarding senior living in general, and happy to help in any way.
Thank you, Paul. I think what you'll find, and I hope you can hang out and see some of the questions, and maybe there'll be some questions for you in regards to Buckner Villas also, but what you'll find is a lot of our attendees are planners. So these are not people in crisis mode. These are the people who are saying, what are my options? What could I be looking for? How could I live? So if somebody wanted to have a tour of Buckner Villas, would they be able to give you a call? And do you welcome that? Is that something that's possible?
Absolutely. We do try to schedule those in advance just to make sure everything's lined up, but we'd be happy to have anyone out and happy to facilitate that.
Great. I have a question about your CCRC just real quick. If you're coming into rehab, do you have to be part of the CCRC, or can you be coming directly from the hospital and going into that piece of your community, I guess you'd say?
Sure. It's a great question, and people can and do join us from outside the community all the time. So the short answer is yes. If someone were in the hospital, they could admit directly into our skilled nursing for just that short-term rehab period, and then kind of bounce back from whatever caused them to be hospitalized and head back home.
All right. Well, thank you, Paul. I'm going to have you take your video off, and we're going to progress through our slides here. Thank you so much. I hope you can hang out for a little bit. So our participants today is Amy Ford from Silvernest. She's going to be talking about home sharing. And then Debbie Douglas from Oasis Senior Living is going to be talking about senior community living. And then I will be talking about staying in your home, which seems contradicting. I'm a realtor, but most of the time people want to stay in their home. And so I help people connect people to people and to services so they can stay in their home. So that's the panelist. But to begin, we are going to have Mr. Charles Curry come in. Let me see, Charles, if I can ask you to start your video. So Charles is our stand-in today. Hey, Charles. Our facilitator of the actual event, she became ill, so she could not be here. And she just became ill just 2 days ago. So Charles is stepping in. We're so appreciative. Charles was there on Age My Way Day that we held at the Austin Board of Realtors, and he was a scribe. And so he did get a pretty good sense of what some of the concerns were for older adults. So we're so happy that he can step in at the last minute today. Thank you, Charles, for being here.
Glad to do it.
Awesome. So I think Charles is going to give us some background information of the Age My Way event. I'm going to go ahead and take my video off. And Charles, you're on your own for a couple minutes.
Hot dog. Always enjoy being on my own. What I'm seeing right now is AustinUP.
Oh, okay. So I think that Paula will bring in your, yep, Paula's bringing in your,
Great.
bringing up your slides. Okay, there you go, Charles.
So for those who were not there that day, I'd just like to reacquaint you with, we talked about it a little bit, but how that meeting was organized. We had 3 topics that day. One was on housing, what your housing options are. One was on age-friendly businesses, and the third was on technology. We divided the groups, the attendees that day up into 3 different groups, and then we divided the session up into 3 different, basically about an hour session for each of those topics. So the groups of people rotated through those 3 topics, and a set of facilitators and scribes were there to work with them. As Cindy mentioned, I worked on the particular issue that was housing. And so I'm going to talk to you specifically about what the people that were there that day had to suggest about housing. First of all, I want to say that having part of my life, I was a consultant and I did focus groups. It's oftentimes difficult to do a focus group and get people to speak up and give you their opinions. We had no problem with that in this particular incident. The people that were there were very ready to talk. They were very interested in the subject of housing. They had some very definite opinions and were very, very open about sharing, and it was a great discussion. One of the things that was apparent, I think, in all of the groups, even though we had a specific topic, ours was housing, one of the discussions invariably was about aging in general, the concerns about aging, the perception of aging, and that sort of carried through in all of the discussions with the issue, particularly about people's lack of planning for getting older, because nobody wants to think about old age. And one of the things that, one of the consistent comments that we heard was that we really need a culture change away from that, in that it is, it's detrimental to the well-being of seniors, old folks, whatever term you like to use. It always tickles me when people are floundering around for a right term when they're talking to me, and I usually interrupt and say, what you're looking for is the word old. I'm old. I'm used to that. Get over it. If you're having trouble with it, that's your problem, not mine. So we in general, we had a discussion about aging, and then specifically in my group, we had this discussion about housing. The first topic that you see on the screen right now was about home sharing, and we made a mistake. And in our in our discussion, we labeled this by the term that's sort of popular in publications now called co-housing. What we learned quickly was that people had a very negative reaction to the term co-housing. It just produced an immediate bad reaction. When we started talking about it in terms of home sharing or house sharing, when we talked about it in terms of someone to be a companion or an assistance to you that would increase safety, would be company, we got a much better response from people. Another negative that we saw was when we talked about it in terms of revenue, as opposed to some of the values that home sharing brings. So that was one of the lessons learned. Co-housing, not a good term for seniors. Home sharing, much better accepted. One of the things that people talked about was that background checks would be extremely important to them, knowing that whoever they might choose to share their home with had a background check that beforehand would be very important. One of the things that people said was, it is important to me not to be alone. They talked about, people typically said they were aware of the term social isolation. They felt like they understood the term social isolation and the negative concepts. A lot of people, however, said, social isolation doesn't apply to me. I'm alone, I live alone, but I'm not lonely. And that, in some ways, that ignores some of the aspects of social isolation. But I thought it was informative to learn that social isolation as a terminology is more and more understood and accepted by the senior community. One of the issues, another issue that came up was, how can I get more information about this? I never really thought about it. Where would I go to learn more about what the options are, and some of the downsides and upsides and what I should be looking for. Another thing that was obvious in the discussions in the three groups that we worked with was that in the case of couples, the wives were more likely to be accepting and the husbands were universally opposed to it. It didn't dawn on me at the time, but when you talk about couples, you're already talking about somebody who's doing home sharing. So one of the primary things that people are looking for, someone to live with, someone so they wouldn't be alone. Couples already have that. Now, couples can still choose to share their house with someone else, but at least in the groups that we talked to, husbands were always negative about the concept of home sharing, wives much more accepting. I think we can go to the next topic now. You'll have time for questions and answers later on. The next one we'll talk about is senior community living. One of the things that we heard from the groups on the subject of senior community living was that they were looking for a safe place. Safe was an often repeated word. Some of the things that they talked about in terms of safe, one was the building structure. They wanted elevators, they wanted to be able to avoid steps. One of the things that really surprised me that I never thought of was the women in particular were concerned about the parking areas. They were used to, in their home, being able to drive their car into the garage, close the door, and go in the house. In the senior community living, they were parking in a parking lot, and depending on how far they had to walk to the door, that was a big safety concern for women. Another thing that came up, some of the people that were participating that day were currently living in affordable housing, and they did not consider the affordable housing that they were in, at least, to be safe. And in that discussion, what seemed to be the issue was there was a lack of familiarity with the other residents. So it was for them too much of a change in terms of unfamiliar surroundings and unfamiliar neighbors, and they just didn't feel safe in the affordable housing. Another concern that came up that is no surprise is cost. The cost of senior living is everybody has heard that it's going up. And so that was a concern that was expressed by a lot of people. One of the things that people said they were looking for was care. That they wanted accessible, qualified, and they underlined that the term qualified several times because it was so often part of what they insisted they were looking for, quality medical care. And one of the things the group seemed to agree on was that preparation was an important component in being key to making better choices for where you might go for senior living, in terms of if a place had a waiting list, which is quite common. Thinking about this, making up your mind ahead of time was a big issue that they talked about. Some people, speaking from experience, said, I wish I had started planning this earlier. I think I would have gone easier for me, and I might have made better decisions. Then the last area is staying in your own home. One of the things we found was in one of the groups, 4 out of 5 people said they wanted to age in place. Not surprising. AARP has done several surveys nationally. Aging in place is typically the preference for folks. However, 3 out of 5 said that they saw problems in doing so. They want to age in place, but they don't think that there are going to be problems. One of the problems they mentioned, top on the list here, property taxes. One of the things that they talked about that they wish that was something that could be done. There are, of course, over 65 property tax exemptions for homeowners. The group suggested there ought to be some breaks for seniors living in rental property as well. A big issue that they were concerned about in terms of staying in your own home was maintenance. This came up over and over and over again. How do I find someone? How do I find someone I can trust? How do I find someone that's affordable? Everybody knows about the labor shortage that we're experiencing right now. And this was a problem that people were already experiencing, trying to stay in their own home, and they felt like it was only going to get worse. One of the comments that people said was, I don't really think I have a choice. It's too expensive for me to move anyplace else. So I'm going to have to figure out how to stay in my own home. Another problem that people talked about a lot was transportation. How am I going to get, if I stay in my own home, I'm managing it right now, but as I get too old to drive safely, how am I going to handle getting to the grocery store, the drugstore, the doctor's office? People said they didn't like public transit. One of the things that people said about it was that public transit takes you from one place to another, but there's no way to do your errands along the way. And I guess that just speaks to, we're all used to driving, and so we're used to a certain pattern, and we do run a set of errands and get everything done all at the same time. There were issues with doing that with public transit. Another thing that people talked about as a big issue was nutrition. It was difficult if you're living in senior living, that is where you're cooking. If you're living in senior living, you have that access to a dining room. Living alone, you have a problem with cooking for one, and then also cooking when you have health problems. Your inability to fix your own meals compounds the problem. One thing that was suggested that people were really interested in, that they'd heard of, was tiny houses as a way of, I'd like to have my own place, but I don't need a great big house that I've got right now. One thing that I noticed that did not come up that surprised me was that people did not talk a lot about how I would get home health care if I decided to stay in my own home. So those were the comments that came up in our group, and I think we'll be hearing some of the solutions from our speakers today, and look forward to hearing what they have to say about it. Thanks for your time.
Thank you, Charles. Thanks for the great summary. You did an awesome job. You wouldn't have known that. You just found out a couple hours ago that you're going to be talking about it. You did a great job. We appreciate it. Okay, Charles, we're going to have you go ahead and turn off your video, and we're going to bring in Amy Ford. And she is from Silvernest, and she is the Vice President of Strategic Planning and Business Development for Silvernest. It's an online roommate matching service that pairs empty nesters, retirees, and other aging adults with long-term housemates. In her role, Amy is focused on generating a vision and roadmap for Silvernest's growth with any current and future partners. Amy joined Silvernest from National Council on Aging, where she was the Senior Director of Financial Wellness, responsible for leading a team in the Economic Securities Division that provided education to older adults on a variety of topics related to financial wellness. Prior to that, Amy led an NCOA team that provided education to older adults who were considering accessing their home equity. Before joining NCOA, Amy supported housing counselors in the training division of a large community development organization, Neighbor Works America. She also previously worked in government and community relations at Loyola University of Maryland on strategic community-based partnership development. She holds a bachelor's degree in psychology, and she received her MBA in management. And Amy, I think maybe I need to have you invite you to come in with your video. Let me see if I can do that. Okay, so Amy's going to come in. We did a lot of research. Hey, Amy, we did a lot of research on talking about home sharing, and there are not a lot of solutions. I'll tell you, I spent hours. I know other people on our team looked too, but we kept on coming back to Silvernest, and Silvernest actually has talked before on AustinUP's platform about offerings that you had. So we were so happy to circle back around and to say, okay, what's going on now in home sharing? And I think you have some great statistics and things that you'll be able to share with our attendees. So without further ado, Amy, you are ready to go.
Thank you. And thanks for allowing me to join today. And hearing about that event and the feedback from the participants was really nice, because a lot of the concerns that we hear about home sharing were really represented in some of that feedback. And so I hope that I can work to address some of that today. So I'm going to just jump in. It's, when we say home sharing, we think about it as a newer idea, but, in all honesty, obviously people have been living together forever. We probably all had roommates at some point in our lives, but for some reason, as we get a bit older, we forget that that could be an interesting way to live or an option for us again. And I think what we find over and again from our users is many consider coming to home sharing for a financial consideration, but ultimately stay and continue the arrangement because they find it's actually a quite joyful way to live. It's not without issues, and we'll talk about that and how to prevent, issues from arising. And it's certainly not for everybody, but for those who are somewhat open to it, our goal at Silvernest is to make it accessible to as many people as possible at scale. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about that. These are all stats that, we probably all feel in some way or another in our lives, or, we're aware of them, but, we know that it's been difficult to save for retirement with rising costs, inflation, all the things that we've already been talking about. Many older adults have a lot of their wealth actually tied to their home. They're house rich, cash poor, so to speak. I mean, I think that's the phrase, but the concept being that a lot of the wealth and resources that families have built over time often are tied up in the home, and most people want to stay where they are. I think kind of this is a popular stat that's thrown around, 85%. I think that even post COVID, I think I've seen some news articles reporting closer to 90%. I don't, it remains to be seen how a post-COVID world will impact some of this, but when you consider the trajectory and growth of the demographics of our country, coupled with some strapped retirement resources, coupled with wealth in the home, coupled with kind of wanting to remain in community for as long as may be possible, this is where home sharing ends up really playing a big role. This is Marlene and Becky. These are a pairing of ours from our platform. They live in Colorado. They've been living together about 1.5 years. And actually this little screenshot was from a story that featured them on PBS NewsHour. And I'm happy to drop that in the chat later. I think that, what they represent in the story that they tell in that segment is something that we hear over and over again from our users, which is, this is Marlene with the white shirt. She owns her own home. She'd been living alone. She was an only child. She saved for retirement. She had an IRA. She works part-time, but the cost of living were just getting to be too difficult. And so she decided that she was going to rent some space and see how it went. And Becky was the housemate who applied, Becky wanted to travel. She wanted to save money on housing resources, and she wanted to enjoy, her retirement. And so this has been a natural relationship where, now they have common friends, they share meals, but it's really, I think that what we are trying to do at Silvernest is enable people to consider this option, but also define it as they see fit. So for Marlene and Becky, it works that they actually have become friends, but not everyone is friends. Sometimes it's just roommates, and that's okay too. And that's kind of part of our role, which I'll talk about. And I think just generally speaking, this is just some screenshots of home sharing has been in the news for sure. I love that insight, Charles, about co-housing. and home sharing. I think that home sharing definitely feels a bit friendlier, and from our perspective, co-housing is more frequently the term used when there's sort of like a common kitchen and like 6 bedrooms and like some shared services and such. Home sharing is really about taking advantage of what we already have in our communities, leveraging existing housing inventory that's already there and just kind of sitting there, ready to be available and, make money for hosts and help home seekers afford rent. I think that what we've been watching as a, home sharing technology company is just growth in this topic and interest and openness to the concept. I think, obviously COVID created challenges. I think that we had anticipated that the bottom would have just dropped out of our user base, but it didn't. I mean, obviously we had a bit of a shock at the beginning, but over time our users just indicated, we want to navigate the risk, the health risk, because we need the income and we don't want to be by ourselves. So there were still, intentions and drivers for those decisions, even despite COVID. Our sort of back of the envelope, this is not an official number, this is just our own internal research. We think there's around 50 to 60 home sharing programs across the country. Most of them are very hyper-local nonprofit organizations that are doing case management. They're helping, manage the process really closely, helping to introduce people, doing more of a paper pen application process and such. And we love these organizations. We lift them up as often as we can. We feature their work. We share their social media because we are serving different populations of people. And we're both after the same goals, which are to make home sharing more common and more acceptable and open people up to the concept. Our our internal, like very back of the envelope number is there are 44 million empty bedrooms across the country. So when we talk about lack of housing stock being a very serious problem in our country, think of what we could do with the power of home sharing. So I'm going to go quickly because I know I'm a little short on time. So this is just, again, what I just mentioned, like what is home sharing specifically? And we talk about them in the context of hosts and home seekers. Hosts post their space for rent. The average income that we see on our platform is about $850 a month. That represents the national average. So we have very big presence in like Denver and LA, et cetera. So, cost of living matters here, but it can be really meaningful income. They can also gain companionship, help with a home upkeep. I'll talk about that in a minute. Home seekers, we find they pay around 60 to 70% of market rates. What this doesn't even include either is like shared utilities, shared groceries, whatever might make sense for the pairing. So on our platform, this is what we're seeing. We are serving mostly women in their 50s and 60s. Most of them are talking to us about a time of transition. Maybe they've gotten divorced, maybe they've lost a spouse, maybe their kids have moved out, maybe they've had an involuntary job change. There's sort of a number of reasons why someone comes to this solution, but it is most frequently women. I think the other really interesting piece here is that when hosts list their space on our site and say, I've got a room, we ask them if they're open to reducing the rent for help around the house. And 40% say they're open to that, which is a great indicator for a home seeker who could be younger or, not necessarily, but could say, how about I do, some transportation for you, some light meals, some cooking, pet sitting, snow removal. I mean, not relevant in Austin, but, it's like, it runs the gamut, and then they document what those chores are worth to them, and they can reduce the rent, which helping, keep, everyone has personal stories about how the world that we, as to the point of the opening comments, like we're all aging, it's all around us, it's within our own families and in our own social circles. But, I can't even change our own air filter without a ladder and help from my spouse. So, it just becomes easier if you've got someone else there with you doing those just small things that make it easier to be at home. And so really how we're, it's interesting because we've been around 7 years, and these are the risks that we've kind of coalesced around and understood to be the big barriers or areas of concern for our users. So, and this came up a lot, Charles, with what you were discussing, but how do I make sure someone is who they say they are? How do I make sure we're actually compatible and we could be happy living together? How do I make my expectations clear? And like, what are my expectations? What are my boundaries for maintaining some privacy? What's important to me? And how do I protect the agreement? And really be these insights of what we've built our platform to address. So I'm going to go very fast here because I don't want to take too much more time, but we focus on security. We have an identity verification process that people can use to ensure they are who they say they are. We are integrated with a background check tool. We have private messaging. We have our core value, that users often tell us is like the compatibility piece is what we're really after. So we're asking lots of questions, and then we're showing you a dashboard around who may be compatible with you and where you're compatible and where you're not, so that you can make choices over how big a deal some of those things are to you. Quiet hours, cleanliness, pets, they're all the things that would probably make, living together easier or more difficult. So we try to highlight these things at the surface so people can have all the proper conversation. And then guidance and communication. So help centers and, phone support and chat support and advice, referral to mediation services if they're needed, templates and tools to help you interview someone and articulate your house rules and document it in a home sharing agreement. So this is just a little snapshot of kind of what I've all gone through about the 4 steps of basically how it works, what it kind of looks like. And this is just a quick snap of our pricing. This is all very transparent on our site, so I'm not going to go too deep, but there's a way to use Silvernest for free and get some of the basic features. You can subscribe for a monthly subscription to get some additional services. I won't go into the benefits too much. We talked about this, but it's kind of nice because regardless of kind of why you might consider the solution of home sharing, you get to benefit from the other pieces. So maybe you kind of just want some company, but now you make some extra income. What are you going to do with it? So it's a nice cross section. And then I can share this PowerPoint through the AustinUP team, but these are just a bunch of resources that share stories. They share thought leadership around just macro trends as to who's considering this. As well as we have a lot of partners, which I didn't get into because I don't know if it's relevant for this conversation, but we partner with governments and nonprofits that are trying to open up home sharing in their community and help bring the solution to their clients. So that is that, and I will stop sharing.
Thank you so much. That was great information, and it hit, like you said, a whole bunch of the different concerns that our elders had at that event that Charles brought up. So you really hit it right on the nail. So thank you so much. I know you're going to stick around for some question and answer. And participants, if you want to write some questions and answers in the chat, we'll ask Amy those after our panelists have spoken. So Amy, I'm going to have you go ahead and take your video off. And then Debbie, if you will come in. I'm going to ask you to start your video, and then you're going to have your slides driven by Paula. So Paula, if you could pull up her slides, look at us. It's like we're pros at this. This is amazing. Let me just give you an idea of who Debbie Douglas is. She's with Oasis Senior Advisor. She's an experienced family advocate with a demonstrated history of working in the social services industry. Debbie earned a bachelor's degree in human development and family studies from Eckerd College and has several years of experience in senior housing, hospice, and memory care dementia. She also has volunteered in support of veterans. We're so happy to have you here, Debbie, talking about some of the solutions to some of the concerns that our older adults had from the Age My Way event. And I'm just going to let you take off.
Great. Well, I'm so glad to be here. I loved hearing what Amy had to say because we get a lot of calls, obviously, for people who could use home sharing. So, Paula, will you just get to like whatever the first one is that makes sense for us? There we go. So there's a lot of reasons to move from your home into a senior community. And I just want to start with the first one, which is something that was brought up a few times. It's the need for socialization and companionship with people of the same age or similar age. And I loved what Charles was saying about the social isolation, because it's it can be a misunderstanding. It's just, if you're being alone can be fine. Being lonely is not necessarily social isolation. Social isolation, even if you're not feeling it, it can still wear away at you. We're pack animals. We were created for connection. So it doesn't have to be a three-ring circus all the time, right? Most of us want some downtime, some privacy, but we do need connection. We do need interaction with other people. And so for some people, staying home alone is not the answer for their health, mental health, physical health, that kind of thing. So anyways, that is a consideration when you're moving into a community because they have activities, but we'll get into the amenities in a minute. Okay, so what was brought up before was what to look for in a community setting and care and safety. So I think the safety issue with the parking, I think a lot of the senior communities have really good lighting and their parking is usually close to the building. I think it's something that if you're still driving and you're going out, especially evenings, that is definitely something to look for in each community because they are all a little bit different with their parking. So I think that's something for sure to look at individually. Amenities are, there can be a pool, there can be game rooms, there workout rooms, a small gym. There also is meals, housekeeping, utilities are included. Maintenance, you no longer have maintenance. That's done for you. The beautiful part of that is, of course, that when you're on your own and you've got some aging issues, sometimes those things are big. It's too much for you, and it takes away from the fun you could be having. Activities being inside the building and with a group going outside the building, that just offers a little bit extra when the weather is really bad, when you're not feeling your best. It's good to have activities that are right there. The food, the meal thing is very important. For those of us who do live alone, it's really can be hard to cook for one. We tend to eat cereal or popcorn for dinner. I'm guilty. So I think it's important to know that to have 2 or 3 meals offered with socialization, you're more likely to eat better, eat a little bit, enjoy your meal more. And they do have different menus and different selections, and they go to diets, low salt, diabetic, even getting to be gluten-free now and things like that. So that is important. Transportation, we're going to talk about the different levels, but almost every community that's considered to be a senior living community has some level of transportation. For a 55 plus apartment, it might be just to stores and things. But for independent living and above, it's going to be to doctor's offices, to, not just stores, but outings, things like that. Rehab on premise is one of those things that's becoming more and more popular. So let's say you have a fall, you go to the hospital, you want to come back as soon as possible to your own apartment in your own place. If they have a rehab on premises, that means you can get 3 to 5 days of therapy right there without adding in a home health having to come in. So that's becoming more and more popular. So it's something to look for people who are interested in that. And I would say, especially for couples, you want to really look at all of the things because you want as much to be right on that same, in that building or on that same campus as possible in case one of you has more needs than the other. Kind of like we were talking about with Buckner Villas, they have all 4 levels. That can be important to some couples, but at least knowing that you have therapy that can come in is important. Okay, I think we can do the next one. So there's different types of senior living. Senior apartments are just literally apartments that are designed for 55 plus. They do have some activities. They have some amenities. Some of them have a nice indoor pool, but an art room. They're geared. They've got elevators. You're not trying to do the stairs, but they do not serve meals. They don't have transportation to doctor's appointments. They are truly, truly, truly independent, I guess is the best way of saying that. Whereas what we call independent living is meals, housekeeping, activities, transportation, all of your utilities are included. So it's, you know, for people who still write checks, it's one check. It's, you know, everything's at your fingertips. It's a great way to live. But the difference is there's no caregivers. The caregivers are coming from an outside agency. Even if that agency has an office in there, they are not caregivers employed by that building 24/7. So if you're feeling like you're going to need some care, or you want to know that there are caregivers on premise, then you're going to go into the levels of assisted living. Assisted living type A does not offer as much assistance. They might help with showers and med management and things like that, but they're not as likely to help with getting you up and down out of your wheelchair, or some other things. The difference is the way it's listed is weird. It's you have to be able to get yourself out of the building yourself if there was an emergency for type A. And for type B, you do not have to do that. I look at it as really, what care do you need, and what type will be the best for you, because that's what it comes down to. You may be able to get yourself out of the building, but that doesn't mean that you don't need that other care. So you have to weigh that out a little bit, and get somebody to help you. This is hard to navigate. So, you know, there are advisors, not just Oasis, but, you know, having somebody help you navigate that is really important. Also, for all of you listening, if you're doing this early research, that's even better. Go see some places, get your information, even if you're years out, because it really helps to have an idea of what each place is like, what type of place you want to go in, what size, you know, what offerings they have, that kind of thing. That's important. So then memory care is very specifically designed, the staff is trained for people with dementia, Alzheimer's, any dementia symptoms that go with other disease processes. There's many kinds of dementia, many diseases that include it as part of the process. So memory cares are set up, designed, the building is designed for the maximum freedom, but safety of people. Their activities are designed because, you know, if you have dementia, you're not going to be doing the same activities. You're not going to engage the same way. The staff is very good at keeping people engaged, and letting them rest when they need it. You know, there's a fine line between overstimulating and understimulating somebody who's dealing with dementia. So when you have a memory care issue, a memory care community specifically is your best option. Now, whether that's affordable, which we'll talk about in a few minutes, or not, but it is your best option. It carries a little stigma. Families feel very guilty. Well, I'm giving up on mom or dad or my spouse, but you're not, because none of us alone are prepared for 24/7 supervision, guidance, encouragement, redirection, and all of the care needs that go with somebody that has dementia or Alzheimer's. So memory care is a very specific type of community, but it's very important for those folks that need it. Skilled nursing and nursing home care is really designed for medical. The whole goal of that is whether or not you just need it short term while you're rehabbing from an injury or an illness, or whether that's where you need to live because you need medical things, tracheotomies, some colostomies, feeding tubes. Those are things that are not always managed in an assisted living. There's licensing requirements. You have to have nurses on site. So a skilled nursing home setting is truly meant for people who have medical needs compared to care needs. And that's, when we get to costs, we'll talk a little bit more about that too. Okay, next slide. Okay, One of the concerns that came up was how to access qualified medical care and other needs. Some are provided on premise, and then some are going to be something that even if you lived in your own home, you would go out for. Most of the communities you can bring in home health. Home health and home care are different things. Home health is your therapies, your nurses. Home care is caregivers, companions, people to do that type of non-medical care. There are visiting physicians that you can sign up with, but most communities also have physicians groups that will come in and do clinics, and then a nurse practitioner that will come in on a regular basis. So that's important because that means your primary care can at least be directed without you going out and making appointments. It allows for quicker testing and quicker things like antibiotics or med changes. On-premise nursing, so some assisted livings and memory cares have nurses there. They may be there 8 to 5, Monday through Friday. They might be there 24/7. Each community is a little bit different, something to ask about depending on your needs. Mobile labs, mobile x-rays, all of those things are often brought into communities, which is very nice not to have fallen, have one part of you hurting, and have to go sit in the ER for hours and hours and hours. So there's something to be said for that. Podiatry comes in to most buildings as well. So that's one more trip out, waiting room that you don't have to deal with. Pet therapy often comes in too. Visitors and volunteers make up a big part of what makes a community go, because besides the activities that are scheduled, they do have volunteers that come in and bring music therapy, pet therapy, other types of quality enhancing activities for each person. So cost is a big thing, right? For all of us in every forum. You know, people think about staying at home and then they have to look at home care, which could be $30 an hour. If you need more than 4 hours, can you afford it? That kind of thing. So when you look at costs, there is, you know, the senior apartments are a little more than regular apartments, but they include more, they usually include utilities. So let's say they're going to be between $1,200 and $2,000 a month. Independent living, where you're getting your meals and your housekeeping, they're going to range. There's a little lower and there's a little higher, but they're going to range between, let's say for a 1-bedroom or a studio, $2,000 and $3,000, $3,500 if you go bigger. Then you get to assisted living, you're going to range between $3,000 and you could go all the way to $10,000. You know, the range gets bigger because the care that you're being offered, that kind of thing. But it's going to be more in the 4,000 and up range. And then memory cares are usually a flat fee. There's a few that have levels of care still, but most are a flat fee. And they range between $4,500 for a shared room and to maybe some are even $10,000 for private. But there is a range there. And then nursing homes, if you private pay, are going to be minimally, I don't know of any right now that are under $6,000 a month. Most are more than $9,000 a month. But if you qualify for Medicaid, the part of Medicaid that pays for your care needs because you need more care, then they will pay mostly for nursing home rather than assisted living. There's probably 4 or 5 assisted livings in the entire Central Texas area that actually accept Medicaid's, the Star Waiver program. So there's many more options for a nursing home to do that. Looking at your budget, preparing long-term care insurance, which now is usually grouped with life insurance, which is kind of awesome. It's pricey though. As we get older, you know, like I'm 60 now, my price per month to start a plan, it would be a lot higher than if somebody starts at 40. But it's something to look at because they're more legitimate and valid now than they used to be, and they do pay, and it is worth the research because they will pay for care. None of these things will pay for independent living. You need a certain level of personal care and help in order for any of these things to kick in. From the apartment to memory care is private pay. That means you're going to find it out of your savings, out of your Social Security income, out of your retirement fund. You're going to be paying that monthly amount. Unless you were a veteran or you were married to a veteran, aid and attendance will pay for part of that. But you have to meet requirements for every program. Anything that's linked to the government, you have to meet requirements, right? So Medicaid and veterans you have to meet requirements, but if you meet those, they can help you substantially. So it's something to look into. Again, I love that we're doing this because it gives everybody that's listening and watching a real opportunity to plan ahead. And planning ahead really helps. I work with most people who are in crisis, and that's fine. We can help anybody in crisis, but I love to help people who are planning ahead because that's the key, really to success.
Thank you, Debbie. Great information. And you hit on a lot of concerns that our older adults had when they attended the Age by Way event. So we appreciate you doing that summary. And I hope you can hang out. And if we have some questions at the end, we'll bring everybody back in. So for now, I'm going to have your video go away. And if you could go ahead and mute, and then I'm going to bring in my slides. So I am doing the last portion of this presentation, and I'm just going to make sure, Paula, let me know if you can see that. I'm just starting with a summary slide. Let me go ahead and start from the beginning. Let's see if it works. I'm trying from the beginning. How does that work? Does it look good?
Does it start with property taxes?
Yes, ma'am.
Correct.
All right. So these were all the different issues that older adults have with living in Austin. So let me just start with each one. The first was staying close to services that you're used to, like your doctor, grocery, and pharmacy. And I'm thinking, okay, if you couldn't stay in your home, but yet you still wanted to have some of those relationships, these are some solutions. Virtual doctor visits, I know those have been great during COVID, and I hope they do continue because it just makes it easier. You don't have to drive into town or drive on the other side of town to visit with your doctor. Another is delivery of medication. If you haven't started doing that, I would highly recommend it. It's something that I'm looking into also for my mother. My mother lives with me, and boy, it's tough when you get low on your medication. And then now we're finding some pharmacies don't always have all the medication. They change their times all the time. Now they take lunch breaks. My goodness, it gets tough picking up medication. So maybe delivery of medication could be a solution. And another would be delivery of food. Again, it's tough when you move into a new area and you have to learn all those things. These could be ways that you could cope and still be able to have a good life and not be so frustrated and still stay with the people that you know and love. One of the other issues is social isolation. So again, if you're staying in home, these are some solutions if you're staying in your home. The first is Aging is Cool. And if you haven't heard about them, just go to their website. They've got in-person classes and they have online courses. So this could be a way for you to stay connected if you're worried about being socially isolated. Another is local senior centers. My goodness, they are busy. If you look at their calendar, they are packed full of things. And they also provide transportation. So they have a whole transportation system we're going to talk a little bit more about. And so if you wanted to get to those local senior centers, there's some public transportation. There's also some online courses with family elder care. And if you haven't looked at their online courses, they have people from all over the nation taking their courses. They actually can subsidize some of the cost of those courses. In some cases, the courses can be free. So you can actually be playing bingo and doing fun things like that. But yet it's not costing you anything, but you're still staying connected. And then one of the great gems is Capital City Village. If you live in the city limits, then you have the opportunity to join Capital City Village, and they have a scalable entry fee, I guess you would say, and monthly fee. So depending on your income, it could go down. So this is not just for the rich and famous, but Capital City Village is a village, and they are helping each other to stay in their homes. One of the things that they provide are events. Many of them have gone online, and you can access those from your home, but they also have a lot of in-person events. Some of the other things that they offer is transportation for their members, and they also offer repair. So they've got a whole list of volunteers that will come and do mostly simple repairs, probably changing light bulbs and things like that. So if you are wanting to stay in your home, but you are worried about social isolation, these are some options for you. Another is transportation. This is something that hits really close to my heart. I actually sit on the board for Drive a Senior / Chariot, and we're in the southwest corner, Elgin, Dripping Springs, Lakeway portion of Austin. There's other, we call them Drive a Senior. They were all together at one point, but now they have different names. But depending on your geographic area, you can go to the Drive a Senior website, and it will tell you which group would be the one that would help facilitate your ride. They really do try to not go into other people's geographic area. There's enough need all over the city. So you would look up Drive a Senior. What's nice about Drive a Senior is they have volunteers, but they also have, in some cases, buses. So you can form a relationship with a volunteer, and that volunteer could be the person who comes and picks you up each time. A lot of volunteers like to continue driving whoever they were driving in the beginning. So you just make a request for a drive. It goes into a database, and then the potential drivers look and see where people need to go, and they pick and choose which drives they can make. Another is Austin Park and Rec's Department of Senior Support Services. So that's who can help you get to some of the local senior centers. They also do other drives in addition to that. Lyft and Uber, they both do drives too. Some of those can actually be paid for. I know Chariot has a small fund to help pay for some of those private rides too. But if you're really slick on your phone, you can use that. And great resource. I would recommend everybody go and just get this resource, because I'm talking about a couple of things, but there's a whole bunch more that's available. The Aging Services Council has worked on a guide, and they worked in partnership with some other nonprofits. And if you go to this website, and we'll save these PowerPoint slides, I'm hoping we can send them out after the event, and you will be able to just click on this and go to the guide. It's a PDF. And I can't remember if it's 14 pages or 44 pages, but there's a whole guide about transportation, lots of other options for you. The city of Austin has lots of options for transportation. So that is the issue of transportation. That's probably one of the biggest reasons why when I meet with somebody who wants to sell their house, it's because they can't drive any longer. So if we can get a stopgap in there, it could allow you to stay in your home a little bit longer. And the other is food, which I really didn't address here, but there are some food programs that are available, food delivery programs, meals that can be delivered directly to you, Meals on Wheels. And but now, because of COVID, we have all these other opportunities to have food delivered through HEB, through Instacart, and other places like that. Okay, where else can you move? So I've done a lot of brainstorming with different people about this, and some groups of people have come together. It could be, I have sorority sisters, for example. So we all came together and kind of talked about, okay, where would we all want to live? The problem is it's hard to decide. It's hard to come to some kind of consensus. It's not very likely. We're from all around the United States now that we'll be able to come up with some kind of solution. But why not meet with your neighbors now and just say, hey, where would you like to live? Well, I want to live in the hill country. Great. I want to live at the beach. And maybe you can get some groups of friends who want to go together and move to some of these outskirts area. Seen a lot of people who have sold their big home, made quite a bit of money in the past years, and then they've been able to move to smaller areas by taking the money that they make on that home. So it's not a bad idea to just have some parties and sit around and talk about where people might want to move, and maybe you can go in group or in mass together. Think about who you want to live by. this is another topic that we talk a lot about. So oftentimes people have children, sometimes they don't have children, but if you do have children, sometimes there's a preference for which child you'd like to live close by. So just having some of those conversations. And then what we do is we just look at what that housing prices are and what our gauge is always price per square foot. So if you look at price per square foot here, and then you look at, price per square foot and some other, I don't know where it would be, just make up anyway, Odessa. And then you compare it to Dallas, and you could live easily in Dallas or Odessa. I can already tell you that's probably going to be cheaper in Odessa. And so you just look at the price per square foot and you say, okay, that's a good plan for me. Consider alternative housing solutions, which today we've already talked about one. There are others. A lot of people are moving back to where they went to college, and they're finding some multi-family housing opportunities close to their alma mater. And then they take advantage of events, football games, basketball games, and social events. And then also some of the schools are offering additional education. So it's just a great way to go back to your roots. Probably some of the best times of our lives was when we were going to college. So it's just all positive. So think about that alternative too. And start early. That is the key. So just kind of start kicking around the ideas now and doing some research now. And then you'll be ready to go when you are ready to go. So those are some other places that you might consider moving to. So one of our biggest expenses is property taxes. And this year, a lot of homeowners have really been hit hard by the increase in property taxes. And you wouldn't be hit hard if you were getting the proper exemptions on your property. And this is something that's really core to AustinUP, but I know the city of Austin is also working on this problem too. We don't know how many people are impacted by not having the proper exemptions, but we know that people are being impacted. And I was able, being a realtor, I can go in and I can do a search and I can see whose mailing address is to the property home address. And then I can look at their exemptions and I can see, I forget what percentage it was only like 2 or 3%. It wasn't like 20%, but 2 or 3% of the people that you could help just by getting the proper paperwork done so that they could decrease their taxes. And we're talking tax savings. It could be $300 to $10,000. One of the biggest benefits is when you're over 65, you get to freeze the value of your house at that time. And so when I go to list a home and somebody's lived in their home for, let's say, 20 years, they're 85 now, that portion of their taxes has been frozen. It makes a big difference on them being able to continue to live in their home. So if you don't have that one exemption, it's huge. And it's really important that you get that. There's also disabled veterans. We have veterans that could be 100%. I had a client once who had to sell her house because her husband had passed away and he was a veteran. They had 100% exemption. And so they had no property taxes. They passed a law now for the spouse to be able to get that exemption. But if you're not getting that disabled exemption on your property, it's huge. I mean, it can make the difference in somebody being able to stay in their home. And it's a simple thing to do. Take it 15 minutes to make sure you've got that all set up right. Be looking for some events from us, we hope in the future, where we are going to be helping people look at their exemptions to make sure they're getting the proper exemption. Another potential thing that you could look at is deferral of paying your property taxes. So yes, you're going to pay your property taxes. You will, when you sell your house, your property taxes will be paid. But when somebody calls me and says, I can't afford to do the things that I want to do around the home, I can't afford to stay here, we'll always talk about potentially contacting the taxing authority and having them stop paying their property taxes. You can't just stop paying it. You have to actually go through a process. What happens is they compound that interest each year that you don't pay it. So it's not fun. But if it makes the difference between you being able to stay in your home and having to move, it's a small price to pay. So you can just defer those property taxes until you sell your house. And that'll be one of the bills that gets paid at the closing of your house. So what we hope is that you'll share this information with other people. Maybe you're not in this situation, but maybe you know other people who are talking about they've got to move because of property taxes. And these are two things that they could look at. What kind of cost savings? It's really interesting. It's not a certain percentage that you can save. Each area has its own taxes, different, different people that they're paying. the taxes too. And so you can't just say, oh, you're going to save 20% if you get homestead exemption. But if you have a homestead exemption, which everybody should have, no matter what age you are, you should have a homestead exemption. It needs to be your primary home. Your tax assessed value that you pay taxes on can only go up 10%. So this past year, we've seen some people, their home prices have gone up 500,000. And so you would only be taxed on 10% increase if it was your homestead. So, and that's a simple form to fill out, all the stuff you can do online. There's some things you have to do. You have to have a utility bill coming to you and driver's license and things like that. But it's pretty simple to be able to save thousands of dollars. So I can't really tell you what kind of cost savings it would be because it really varies by where you live. And that's just my contact info. So I'm going to go ahead and stop that. And then if I could, I'm going to have Amy come back in and Debbie come back in. We're just going to see if we have any questions. And I am looking in the question and answer, and I'm looking in chat, and I don't see any. We shouldn't be offended, though. It's because we've just provided so much information. So, Amy, was there anything that now that you've kind of heard it all that you wished you would have said? Any, in summary, kind of comments or?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think, you know, I've worked on older adult issues for my whole career. And I think that the biggest piece that I always reflect on in my personal life and professional life is that people all deserve dignity of choice. And when we think early and plan early, we get access to that choice and that dignity. And so whether, you know, a senior living facility or a home sharing, intergenerational, like whatever the case is, being able to make the choice and have the options is really what I think we're all, you know, trying to strive for here, because not everything will be for everybody. So I really like this discussion because it highlighted, you know, all the different possible paths, but, you know, it's up to each individual to decide.
As we say, that's what makes the world go round.
Yeah.
I would love to have all my meals done for me and somebody come clean my apartment once a week. I'm into that. But I talk to other people like, oh, I want to be able to garden and I want to do that. So that's what makes the world go around and makes things interesting for everybody. I am looking, it looks like we do have a question. Are there different issues for men versus women that we should know about? Boy, Debbie, I think you can probably answer that question because you talk to both men and women. What is it that you hear and what are some of the differences that you hear?
It is funny because like one difference is for when they're looking at senior living, a kitchen or even a kitchenette for a woman is much more important than a man. And it's not just, it's almost an emotional thing that like having a kitchen or kitchenette feels more like you're actually in an apartment or a home rather than like a hotel room type of a thing.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I think men are just less emotionally tied to that concept.
Mm-hmm.
So I have seen that. I've seen both not want to move, you know what I mean? Like, so some men like to putter, like the garage, you know, they like fixing things. So sometimes it's hard for them to figure out what are they going to do if there's somewhere where there's nothing to do.
Mm-hmm.
So I think there's more of that. Now men and women both it goes both ways for socialization.
Mm-hmm.
There's men who are the social people, and then there's the wives that are social people. So I do see a difference in that. Sometimes men want companionship because their wife did all the things. They made all the arrangements, they cooked, they did those things. And the men are like, well, I don't want to sit around this empty house by myself and not have any of that.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas women are sometimes like, no, I'm good. I can just keep doing it. But then I think some women were thinking Golden Girls, right? We're like,
oh yeah, I'm all about it.
I am too. I'm like, I'm trying to enlist a bunch of people. So I think there's that. So some of it is men, women, you know, depending on what they've been used to, if their gender roles were kind of tight. But I think more and more we're seeing it's individual personalities,
Mm-hmm.
you know, more than anything, kind of like you're saying, person who wants to garden versus, me who would much rather have meals, than.
Or watch a movie. I'd rather watch a movie in a movie theater and have my feet up, in a nice, cool
too.
area. Amy, how about in the sharing of housing? Do you see a difference in men and women?
We do. So more women seem to be open to the concept of home sharing. More, that's just, how the chips are falling. But backing up, I mean, women live longer and earn less. I mean, let's be clear. So I
Right.
think that when we think about, aging as women, we have to consider that we will potentially outlive our partners, and we've earned less because we've taken time away for caregiving. I think that's pretty common, whether it's children or parents. So there's gaps in income, there's not as much contributed to Social Security. So I think that's a very real consideration for planning for spending and needs for income.
Mhm. Somebody's asking a question about the RV. I was referencing, CM, I was actually referencing where we had somebody who was a job suggesting that people who were looking for jobs could live in their RV and move around the country. And it was just really fun to hear about how she was able to get these remote kind of jobs. And so she got to see the United States. So it wasn't really for co-housing. I do think that there are some benefits for RVs, but I see some physical issues in RV parks that just don't, unless they're built for older adults, they're kind of rough. I've got the stairs, it's hard to get in, and you can't move about, in a wheelchair and things like that. So it's not as friendly as we would hope. I see another question. Let me see what that is. Is there an area in Austin for retirement RV living? Not that I know of. And I've just got done doing a whole bunch of research on it because I bought a trailer and I actually put it into a rental pool, and the rental pool company was going out of business, which is very unfortunate. It has to do with gas prices and things like that. And so I was having to look at alternative situations for the trailer, and I did not find any that were specific by age. So do you know of any, Debbie? Is that something that you've seen?
I mean, I know somebody who lives in one in Georgetown, and I'm pretty sure it's 55 and up.
Oh, cool. Okay.
I'm not
So I would just Google RV living over 55 and see what you can find for that. Well, those are all the questions that I am seeing, and I want to thank you again. What I like about this is we had the event, we heard some problems, we said, well, we know some solutions or people who have solutions. Let's get everybody together, throw out these ideas. It's not by any, we're not solving all the problems at all, but there are some immediate solutions, and I just appreciate you guys sharing your knowledge with everybody today.
Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, guys. Well, we will see you next month where we're going to talk about technology, and we have people from all over the city coming to talk about technology, lots of solutions. We're super excited to be able to share. In that case, there are a lot of programs out there. It's just that you're not hearing about them. So we're excited for you to come back next month. Please go to our website to register. Thank you, and we'll see you next month. Bye.